DxO is a French company that produces dedicated software for the digital camera. Its flagship product is DxO PhotoLab, which is a raw file photo editing application, now in version 6. So let's take a look and see what's new in this version. Well, we'll give a brief overview first. When we launched PhotoLab 6 for the first time into the photo library, and on the left hand side here we can see the file structure of your hard drive, and on here I have all these images in various folders. So we click on a folder and we have the previews on the bottom of what's in that folder, and we can also see a preview of any image that we may have selected on there. And we can go to any folder and we'll see straight away all the various images contained within that folder. And if we hover over any image, we'll also get the EXIF information or the camera data associated with that image. This is your main viewing area, and we've got the browser on the bottom, which, as I said, reflects whatever's in the file structure on the left hand side. We can enlarge this and we can bring up the entire screen, which is possibly more useful. However, when we click on an image, we're not going to see the preview immediately. We can just drag this down. The disadvantage of having it this way round is now that all those files, we've got to scroll down through on the right hand side here to see those files. A better way will be to have a second monitor where we can display all these images here, and we would do that by going to View, Unlock, Image Browser, and if we've got a second screen, then that will automatically appear on your second screen. On the right hand side we've got the histogram that's associated with any single image on there. So let's click on an image there and we can see the histogram will change according to the image. It'll also give us all the metadata for that particular image. This is ISO 400, 5.6, the shutter speed, and whatever EV value it put in there, and your focal length of lens used. And also tells me which camera I shot this on as well. Plus also tells me the date it was shot, etc. Below we've got all the IPTC information where you can put your creator's name, your country, phone numbers, etc. This is if you're sharing your photographs. Below this we've got keywords, so you can put keywords to whatever image you want. Going back onto the left hand side here, at the very top we've got search for images, a new feature for PhotoLab 6, and we can put on here whatever we want. Say we want to see all the images that are shot at 400 ISO, so we go 400 ISO and press enter. Now it'll take a while for well, there we go, it's already pulled it up. I've got 15,252 images shot at ISO 400. Now I do have a very large database of photographs on my hard drive. In fact, I've got 240,000 images, which is 1.5 terabytes of data. So this can take a little while. So if I click on this now, it'll show me exactly all the images on there, and this can take a little bit of time depending on the speed of your own computer. So it's now loading up, and these images go back years. And if I want to find the exact location of this image, I just right click on it. DxO has a database of 77,000 camera lens combinations. And if you click on an image that hasn't got that lens combination in there, DxO will automatically remind you to put in a module for that particular image. So now I can see that was shot on a Nikon 4D40X with a 12 to 24 millimeter zoom. So I can now click on there, and if I go next, it will install that particular module for that. And now these modules actually are customized to that particular lens and camera combination, so we get perfect images each time. So it's automatically downloaded that module. We're on there. So now I can look at all the various images that are shot at 400 ISO. So now we've gone back into our London project folder, and if I click on this particular image here, we've got it in the preview window here. We can also see a before and after. Now I've not actually done anything to this image, but if we go on to the before and after, we can see that there is a slight difference. Now this is where the modules have actually kicked in. DxO has applied certain algorithms to the image to optimize it based on the camera information. If I click on the compare, we can just see it darkening and lightening slightly, so it's actually lightened the image. So now, before we move on to the next section, I'll just show you one more feature within this. As I've already mentioned, that you can click on any folder and all the images will display. You don't have to import anything into PhotoLab 6 in order for you to see what's contained within the folder. But here we do have another section called projects. So if we click on projects there, we can see I've got two projects set up there. One's Aldborough and one's London. You can create as many projects as you like, and you can add photographs to your project. So if I click on the London one, we can see now that we've automatically got, I think it's 13 pictures within there. So my project for London, I've got 13 pictures. So now if I want to work on one particular project, whether it's a model shoot or a place I've visited, I can put those photographs into that project. Now these are not actually moved. These actually just create a link to the actual photographs. So if I right click on the picture, I can now see where my photograph is. There, show input file in Windows Explorer, and that will tell me exactly where that file is located if I want to download it, or I can start editing straight away from here. So let's do that now. We'll go on to the customize menu. In fact, actually, another point I want to just highlight is if I hover over any picture, your metadata information comes up there. So it's not only on the right hand side, it will actually appear when you hover your mouse over there. We'll go on to the customize section now. So I've selected this picture, we go customize, click on the top button here, and this takes us into our customize window. So my project is still active here, so I can actually now work on all these pictures here. If I want to go back into the other full file folder system, I go back on there. On here we can see what all the various functions are. On the left hand side we've got the photo library, we've got a move zoom feature here. So if I click on there and I want to see whereabouts, I can just click on that and just scroll around the window. I can also do that with my hand on the actual image itself. So this is quite an easy way we can quickly navigate around the window. We've got the metadata here and the GPS coordinates if you've got any advanced histories, etc. On the right hand side, this is where the power for PhotoLab comes in. We can make adjustments to any image we like. I will do a full review of this software, looking at each module in far more detail at a later date, but today I'm just going to be focusing on the new features. So here we've got exposure compensation. We've also got a smart lighting function on there. We can see now that some of these have actually been automatically applied. DxO will apply certain algorithms to photographs to correct them to where it thinks it's right, but you can override all these. If you want to see what DxO has applied, just click on this active corrections button there and it'll tell you exactly what's been applied. On this one it's applied smart lighting. It's also applied a bit of reduced contrast on there. If we go into the color tab, we can see that it's done some color accentuation, color rendering, etc. It also tells me what camera profile I've used on there. And again, we can go through all the different modules and we can see what's been applied. But if you don't want any of these to be applied, you can just click on that and take it off, and we're back on there, and we can take the contrast off as well. But generally speaking, DxO does do a pretty good job on everything. So now we can put on the clear view plus, and we can put on contrast, and we've also got an RGB curve here as well, so we can increase the highlights. Oops, there we go. And we can take the shadow details down. We can mess around with the picture. All the usual functions for most image editing applications. This is primarily for raw file processing. There's no layers function on this, so if I want to superimpose another photograph on this, we can't do it. It is actually there to optimize your raw files, and DxO has invested a lot of time into actually creating profiles. As I said before, 77,000 profiles or camera modules are actually within their database. So when you open a photograph, and it will look for that module and apply it to your image there. So now let's have a look at some of the new features that are on the DxO PhotoLab 6. One of the most impressive features of DxO PhotoLab 6 is its new denoising technologies, which now incorporates Deep Prime XD, and that stands for extra detail. Now I'm going to show you a few sample pictures here, but I've already rendered these and I'll explain why in a moment. At the moment we're looking at a JPEG file. So this is a JPEG. I'm just going to put it in the right position here. Let's put it at a fairly good magnification, 120, maybe a little bit more than that. Say 140, so we can see detail now. This is your JPEG file as is. You can apply a high quality noise reduction on JPEGs, but generally speaking, JPEGs have already had their noise reduction applied to them. They've had color correction applied, white balance, etc., and sharpening. So JPEGs straight out the camera, ideal for using straight away on social media. But if you really want the highest quality, then shoot everything in RAW file. And if I now click on a RAW file, this is a RAW file. You can see now there's quite a lot of noise on this RAW file. And if we actually look at the RAW file without any corrections whatsoever on there, and we can see just how noisy the RAW file is. DxO will actually correct a lot of this for you. I'm going to go back onto this one here. The preview window here will show the corrections made to it. The actual main window will not show the noise reduction on there. So even if I go into Prime, nothing will change there. The small preview window will change, and you can actually sort of define where you want that preview window to actually work for you. So we can go into the various modules there and see what it does, but we're not going to see it on the main image, which is a little bit disconcerting actually. So I'm going to go on to show you some photographs that I've already prepared, already rendered. So now we'll look at the with no noise technology applied. Take no notice of this on the right here because it's not going to change because these have already been rendered, and these are DNG files now. And we go on to the next one where we've got, this one's got high quality applied to it. And we can see the noise reduction has reduced the noise on there. And if we go into Prime, again, it's a little bit better. And we've smoothed out, there's virtually no noise available at all. Now Deep Prime, this was the maximum you could apply to any image on previous versions of DxO PhotoLab. And again, it's extremely good. But if we now look at the Deep Prime XD, it's actually improved. Look at the texture on this chair here, for example, or even on these the details on this mantelpiece. And there we go. It's just taking a couple of seconds to think. We can see far more detail on here and far more detail in the actual decorations on the mantelpiece. So Deep Prime XD does work extremely well, and it's very impressive indeed. I would hope that they're going to include this feature in their future updates to their Photo Raw software. Note that Deep Prime is only available in DxO PhotoLab 6, the Elite Edition. The Essential Edition has Deep Prime, but not Deep Prime XD. You can also make further adjustments to lens sharpness and chromatic aberrations and use the unsharp mask on any. The one thing that I did find rather strange, even once you've rendered a file as DNG, this lens sharpness actually goes offline. It doesn't appear for every lens, and I'm not quite sure why it doesn't, but on most RAW files it should appear, the lens sharpness. I presume it may be something to do with the modules that it installs. But overall, I think this is an impressive feature, and this alone would sell the product for me, that I can actually extract the maximum amount of detail for any RAW file. Another new feature is that DxO PhotoLab 6 introduced a re-engineered color processing algorithms that push the boundaries of color management, and a new extended working color space. These are complemented by a soft proofing mode, ensuring accuracy throughout the entire workflow, allowing you to make adjustments according to how your photographs will be reproduced for display, whether it's on a high definition screen or as a fine art print. Now, I've not actually gone into this in any great detail. That was a reading or quote from their press release. The soft proofing can be found on the color module here. Just click on the soft proofing and then we can select our profile. We can also import a profile. So if your printer's got various profiles, we can just import that printer profile there. So we'll import, say, the Epson Ultra Glossy on there, and automatically the on-screen display will reproduce more or less what you're going to get from your printer. Now, I've not tested this for accuracy, but I'm going to take DxO's word for it. That's going to produce absolute accuracy, and we can turn that on and off by clicking on the soft proofing module. Another feature which I particularly like is the perspective control feature. Now this is very impressive actually. I've taken this picture on purpose, the building looking up, it's leaning backwards. Primarily I wanted to get it all in there. The way I could correct this in the past would be to use a perspective control lens, or shift lens should I say, and that would correct it. But here we can do this quite easily. We click on the perspective tool there, and then we click auto. It's automatically corrected it, but as you can see, it's distorted the picture quite a bit in order to put all the corrections in there. But we can now go on to the crop module. If we click the original and we'll do auto based on keystoning, it's automatically cropped it for us. But I can see a little bit of the top's being cropped off, so maybe we go into unconstrained and we get a bit more of the top. And it is very impressive and very fast correction on there. All the verticals are straight. This is absolutely a terrific thing for any person who's interested in architecture photography. It's terrific. If you want to actually do more of a customized crop, we can now just alter this. But as you can see, there's the boundary of the image has actually come into this. One of the problems I did find is I cannot correct this in DxO PhotoLab because this is actually the edge of the photograph. I would have to bring it into another imaging application in order to fill that space in. Although I could render this in DxO as a TIFF file, JPEG or Photoshop file, whatever, and then re-clone that in again. But as it stands at the moment, I would have to render the file before and open it again in order to correct this bit of cutoff. But all in all, it's actually done extremely good job. Now, we'll be talking about Viewpoint 4 at a later stage in this review, and that also has some very impressive features on there. So in this section now, I'm going to look at the local adjustments. But before I do that, let's do the perspective on this one as well. And we'll correct that there. We'll do our crop on that, and we'll select unconstrained, and we'll also auto-based on keystoning. There we've got it nicely, all the verticals are nice and correct. As you can see, there's quite a contrast of light at the bottom there. It's totally underexposed. So let's use our local adjustments to correct this. So click on local adjustments, just right click on the bottom here, and we'll select the adjustment we want to make. I'm going to do an auto mask on this. This does work extremely well. So let's click auto mask, and then all I need to do, we can alter the size of the brush. That center dot there is actually the part that you want to place over the parts you want to lighten up. So let's just go right around there. Don't worry if it is looking really quite rough. It doesn't matter as long as I don't sort of take that dot over into the areas I want to preserve. There we go. So, and now that whole area is selected, and now if I go into the exposure and we'll lighten it up, you see just that area only is being lightened up. Now the one thing I particularly don't like about this is this panel here that comes out. I would rather have actually had that panel appear on the right hand side, because at the moment it's just distracting, I find. We can also reduce the contrast slightly on there. There we go, and that looks pretty nice. On the whole, it works pretty well. So now let's have a look at some more local adjustments that we can make, and we right click on there and we can select now. Let's select a control line, Now we can just drag a line down from there to maybe the coastline there. It's going to sample all the blue in there because my little dropper is in there, so I can place that dropper where I want, and that's what's going to be sampled. Now if I go into my adjustments and we darken it down, you see it's just darkening the blue. These rocks on the left hand side there have stayed untouched, and let's make a little bit more contrast on there, maybe a bit of clear view on there. That's quite a, and that just brings out some of those white clouds a little bit more. And I can actually now also do another, create a new mask, and we'll do another line one there. We'll do it on the bottom part of the screen there, this on the water, and we'll darken the water down a little bit just to give it a bit of depth, maybe a bit more contrast, and again a little bit more clarity. And there we've got our picture, and we can see a before and after. And at the moment it goes into split screen. Only when you're in the local adjustments will you have the split screen. In all other modes you'll have a dual picture, but you can see it's in that couple of simple clicks on there have made a lot of difference. Now if I reset the picture again, and now we'll select, well, let's move this split screen out of the way. If we select now the graduated filter, this has a totally different effect. So we click down on there. Now this is one of the things that really annoys me about DxO is that this mask filter itself is actually a blue. So most people are going to want to select the sky. I'm not sure why DxO have not given you the option to choose whatever color you want as a mask color, but blue is definitely not the color I would choose specifically for this one. But now if we, with the graduated filter, if we make this graduated, you can see the mountain or the rock here on the left, or the cliff I should say, has actually been affected by that as well. So it's not possibly the best option for it, unless of course you want the entire thing, but I prefer the line one there. So we'll reset this. Other options on there is the ability just to brush in where you want the mask to be, so I can just say I only want this area here to be affected, and then again we can make our adjustments accordingly, just darken it down, lighten it up, do whatever we want on there. So you can brush in, and if you've particular areas you don't particularly want on there, we can erase certain areas on there. Again, as I say, this let's make the size a little bit bigger, and again it's this blue filter that I find, or the blue mask on there. There is another one section before we leave the local adjustments. Let's reset this again, and we can do what's called a control point, and this is where we now drag out, put a control point there, and just drag out an area like so, and that's going to sample anything that's within that area, and we'll make that dark, light, whatever. But there is like a hot spot, you can see it there, there's a hot spot which I didn't find particularly useful. I would have rather have it go all the way to the edges rather than just a hot spot on there. Not sure why it's only a hot spot. We'll take that off there. The other thing you can do on here now is you can view the mask, and this is the only mode that you can view the mask in, by just pressing the key M on there. On the Macintosh these are actually displayed on the bottom, but on a Windows it's not. So just press the letter M, and now we can change all sorts of parameters on there. We can increase the chroma and the luma ranges, so we can be very selective on the parts we want to be affected, and then press the letter M again to take us back into our mode there. But as you can see, it's still got that hot spot on there, so it's not ideal. I found this one quite awkward one to work with, although by using a combination of control points you can actually create the effect you want. And on the right hand side here, we'll get control points. So if I add another control point to it, new mask, there, we've got 2 control points, and you can rename this one the C, etc. So whatever you want, and that one we can rename it as Sky. So that makes it easy for you to locate them all. As I said, I'm not particularly fond of this control point system, but then probably I'm not used to it fully anyway. So we'll reset that. Another new feature is the Retouch Tools. So we click on the top Retouch button there, and we get the tools here. We've got the brush size here. We're going to do repair. We've got feathering, opacity, and we can also ask it to show masks. So we leave the size as is. At the moment, we can actually increase the size, and the size is actually the center bit there, and the feathering is the outer circle there. So I'm going to leave it as small like this because I'm going to remove these poles. So let's just drag the Retouch tool over the pole, and hopefully that pole will disappear, and it has. We can also see that where the pole was there, and it's resampled from this area, but we can just see a little bit of that lady's boot coming in, so we can actually move that a little bit further along there, and let's remove that boot. And again, we do the same on it. Generally speaking, it does work pretty well. There's a couple of times when it can be caught out, like here now. It's sampled the road below. I don't know why it's done that, but we can sort of move this around so that it's in perfect position. There we go. As I say, sometimes it can be caught out. It's not always reliable, but you do have the option to make the alterations should you need to. Again, it's done at the bottom there. Okay, so there's one of my bug bites with this program. It's not always accurate. In fact, it's not really done this bad before, but it's always a way when you're demonstrating something that something will go wrong. Anyway, that's how to retouch tool. You've also got the clone tool on there as well. So the clone, I mean, if I want to clone this lady out here, it works in a similar way to the other tool there. Now it's cloned her out, it's selected an area. So primarily it's the same as a retouch, and it does work pretty well. So she's gone. All in all, it will get you by on certain bits. It still needs a bit of work doing to it, in my opinion, but it's okay. I will at a later date compile a more detailed review of the software. But one of the other features I did like is these presets you can apply. So if you click on the preset button there, and it will apply a certain amount of presets, and here we are. We've got all the different presets that are available on there, black and white presets, so you can choose any one of these. They're already, and any one that you do choose, you can further enhance or optimize later on. There's a good selection. It's nicely laid out. I think it's really super. So we click on that one there, and it's applied that one there, and it shows you exactly all the different algorithms that have been applied to this image. I do like that feature, and you can create your own. Once you've created a look that you like, you can save it as a preset, and that will appear in this presets lists. It's also got, if you've got the film pack loaded up, it'll also give you previews of the film pack, all the different films that are available and the looks that each film give you. And we've got color, black and white filters, so there's a lot on there, but you do need the film pack for this. Another thing I had meant to mention before is that the DxO Prime or the Deep Prime XD is only available on the Elite version of DxO PhotoLab 6. The Essential Edition does not include Deep Prime XD. The other DxO application I'm looking at is DxO Viewpoint 4, and immediately I'm taken to a folder. This folder actually contains all my sample pictures I want to use. So let's just click on one picture here, double click on it and have a look at the interface. At the top of the screen here we've got the browse button, which will take me back to that previous screen. It tells me which image I've taken from 17 images. This one can compare it with the original image, or this one can display them side by side, and we can fit the zoom, or we can have a one-to-one. We'll do fit the zoom, fit the screen should I say. We can also flip the image or rotate the image vertically 180 degrees, back again. We can flip it sideways, etc. There's also, we can display a grid over there if we need the grid, or we can actually create our own grid lines on there. So let's create some grid lines. We can have vertical lines. Just click on that button there and then just click in the image and it'll create as many vertical lines as you want, or even horizontal lines as well. They could be useful for more specialist architectural work. I'm not going to use those for the time being, so let's take those off. On the right hand side here we've got the perspective. Now this is the most important tool of them all, so we click on the perspective and we've clicked on auto and it's automatically corrected the picture for us. I haven't got to do anything else. It does a pretty good job. 9 times out of 10, or even 10 times out of 10, I've not had any problems with it. So I'm quite happy to accept that. We can vary the different things. We can also reshape if we need to reshape at all. This is a new feature on there, and it puts a grid on there so we can actually drag out different parts of the image. I'm not so sure how useful this is for most people, but it could be a bit of fun playing around with it if you want to distort a building, whatever. I don't see any use for it for myself. Most imaging applications do have some sort of distortion effects on there, so we'll reset that. We don't need that. The crop tool is probably the most useful one. We can auto crop this, and if we click on auto, it should crop it automatically. We can also, at the moment we've preserved the aspect ratio. If we do it unconstrained, we can now click on the crop tool and we can sort of crop the image to the way we want it. And let's get rid of some of this roadway, get rid of some of the side areas, so we make it a tighter image, and we'll click apply there. Now, generally speaking, this works absolutely wonderful. It's a terrific application. It's very simple to use. There's no image editing involved afterwards. So if I want to make any alterations to the coloring on this image, I have to export it and then bring it into my image editing application and work on it from there onwards. Now, as I said, most of the time it will produce great results. So we go back to browse. I'm not going to save this, and I'm going to choose this image, which I know is particularly difficult. And if I now go onto the perspective on there and do an auto, it's not really corrected it. It's still leaning over. Not particularly happy with that. So I'm going to reset that one, take that one off auto, and I'm going to use these find the vertical lines, and these are quite useful actually, especially an awkward image like this. So now we've got these 4 dots. We can have them in the horizontal position if we wanted to, or you can have 4 dots as a square, but I'm going to use these ones here. There's basically 2 lines with 4 dots. So we click on the top dot here and it magnifies it, so I can be very precise in where I want to place it. So I'm going to place it on this edge of the building here, and I'm going to take the bottom one there and find the corresponding edge on the bottom line there. So there we've got that all automatically selected. Now this turret is actually leaning inwards here, so I'm going to move this around and I'm going to roughly put the turret in that sort of line, so that's roughly the angle it's at. So now we're going to apply this, and we can see that it's corrected it pretty well on there. And of course we can use the crop, and we'll do unconstrained on there, and we've got the whole image on there. And as previously mentioned, we'd have to bring this now into another image editing application in order to correct the colors, but it's a really useful feature there. So if the auto doesn't do it, then the perspective controls it gives you more options to fine tune it yourself. Right, finally I'm going to look at another use for this. I'm not going to save that, and let's go on to this one here. Now, photographing paintings in a gallery, if they allow you to do so, or if you want to copy some artwork, then sometimes it can be quite difficult, especially if there's a window behind you, as in this case, because most paintings are now protected with glass and the glass is reflected in the painting. So I can't use this. It'd take me a long time to retouch that picture. So what can I do about that? Well, let's go back into Browse again, and one way of doing this is to actually photograph the painting or artwork at an angle, and this will get rid of any reflections on there, assuming there's no other windows, of course. And now we can use the perspective control tool, turn that on, and it's automatically selected auto. So let's click on auto, and as you can see, it's actually corrected the painting, but it's in the wrong position. And this is where we go to the crop tool, and we'll, instead of preserve the aspect ratio, we'll go on to unconstrained, and that's brought it back into the center. And now if we click on the crop tool itself, we can now crop off all the unwanted parts of the image there and come in for a nice tight image on there. So let's bring it right down into the edges of the frame itself, and very simple, apply. And there we have our perfectly straightforward copy of the painting. Again, you need to bring this into your image editing application such as DxO PhotoLab 6 to correct all the colors and enhance the picture a little bit more. This is ideal if you're copying photographs or doing any copying work and you have difficulty lining the camera up. This Viewpoint 4 will actually do all the corrections for you. It's absolutely a great application. I can't find any fault with it. I'm not going to criticize it because I just love it. And I've used this from version 3 before, and I've used it with other applications to correct any architecture work I do or any copying work. I do a lot of painting copies and things like that. So it's absolutely useful for me. Terrific application.